KFE, and watch. Well, this looks somewhat one-sided. Letting them know that I am streaming and commentating their match. So we have Studsman Nick on a Dish, Shadows, and Untamed deck. And he just used Save the Pack to tremendous benefit to reset this board state. And Tom is not happy with that. He had built up an impressive board state in the first, where are we, 10 turns, and saw it all wiped away. He has an Iron Obelisk key, which is probably why he had so many damaged creatures. It makes your opponent's keys more expensive for each damaged Brobnar key or Brobnar creature you have. So that was driving before that Save the Pack, which destroys each damaged creature, was driving his Stutzman Nick's key price up through the roof in Amber. Tom also has 2 Gauntlets of Command out, giving him plenty of options on fighting or getting free readies on his Brobnar turns. Unfortunately, his board state doesn't support it right now, but before and that's one of the reasons Save the Pack was so critical there, to get this board state back into a manageable status. And then Ritual Balance, when you call Untamed, you can activate it to steal an Ember from your opponent if they have 6 or more. So in other words, if they're in danger of forging a key, you can take one away, and only then. It's a nice safety valve to have. Tom throws out a Mermook, further making costs more expensive, and a Witch of the Eye to get cards back from his discard, and the World Tree, another way to get cards back from your discard. So he gets discard to hand by reaping with the Witch. Witch is a high murder priority. I would be very surprised if Stutzman Nick doesn't at the very least stun it with the Big Twig here, because he's called Untamed as his house. But the World Tree is harder to control, and it lets him put any creature back on top of his deck, so he can plan for his future turns. And there we see Big Twig stunning the Witch of the Eye and exhausting it so that it will not be able to activate and return a card to the hand next turn. Returning cards directly to the hand is a ridiculously powerful ability. So, the follow-up question is, what does Stutzman Nick do after having reaped with Big Twig? If that's his only card that he has, it's somewhat underwhelming. But it may have been necessary. He discards a key charge. He was in no state to use the key charge. Tom gets his first key forged. The key charge lets you basically forge a key at +1 current cost. And by discarding it, he opens up his hand to get more possible options going, since he obviously only had the 1 untamed card. Which means that turn was very, very weak in terms of board state control and Amber generation, but it was solely to try and lock down Witch of the Eye for at least 2 turns. Otherwise, Witch of the Eye puts Regrowth back in the hand. That's just a extra free Amber, and picks up another card from the discard. In this case, it has to be a creature. And Mermook or Snufflegator, which the Eye could also pull back Nepenthe Seed or Nepenthe Seed, or the Grasping Vines, or set up a different faction on the next turn. Ooh, Fertility Chance. Tom gives Stutzman Nick 2 Amber and then uses Ritual Balance to steal 1 back. Thanks to the Mermook, making the keys 1 more expensive. Stutzman Nick is not currently capable of forging his second key, but Tom has put himself at 6 Amber with that fancy play, and now has the potential to forge his second key if Stutzman Nick doesn't have an immediate response on the next turn. Tom is activating World Tree, looking through his discard, seeing what he wants to pick up and put back, and he chooses Magda the Rat. Magda the Rat is an excellent Shadows creature with 4 power and elusive. It's really relatively difficult to kill, and when you play it, you get to steal 2 amber, and when it leaves play, your opponent steals 2 amber back. If you time that right and you steal 2 amber, forge your key, and then have none to steal back when Magda the Rat dies, it's a free steal of 2. And anytime you can steal 2 on a play is spectacular. We see Stutzman Nick playing out Schuler. Schuler activates because his opponent had more than 4, so he steals 1. An Eater of the Dead and a Tentacus come out. Tentacus is really strong here with the artifact support that TomTom has. Every one of these artifacts is an activation, except for the Iron Obelisk, which is a passive. But 4 activated artifacts with Tentacus in play, he now has to pay to use any of them. I don't expect Tentacus to stay in play particularly long. It would not surprise me in the slightest if he calls Brobnar, and I do not believe you can get around Giant Sloth's text with a Gauntlet of Command, but throws Bumpsy at Tentacus. And then Headhunter to gain 1 on fight at Toxin, because Toxin's another one of those cards that is very tricky and annoying to play against, because when it reaps, you have to discard a card at random. We also see that Stutzman Nick was at 7. TomTom, we know, has a Magda the Rat in hand, so there was no way Stutzman Nick was ever going to be able to forge the key at that 7. And 2 Urchins come down, and Magda the Rat comes down. So right away, that's stealing 4 from on-play abilities from Stutzman Nick, putting TomTom at 9, making for some significant problems for Stutzman Nick. Now, does Stutzman Nick have an answer to this current board? Because this board is looking a bit dicey. We do see that because TomTom called Shadows instead of Brobnar or Untamed, none of the artifacts came into play, so Tentacus was less of a priority target, and that's borne out by the all play from hand. There was not an activation of anything on the field. Looking at the board state, it's easy to say that Stutzman Nick should call Dis, and he in fact does. Using Pandemonium, each undamaged creature captures 1 from its opponent. I have seen this card not working on Crucible Online recently. I don't know what's broken with it. I had to go into manual mode the last time I played with it to get it to work correctly. It should have just... Right now he has a choice, Stutzman Nick, because he's the active player. He gets to pick which 4 of the undamaged creatures of TomTom that his 4 amber will go on to. And then his creatures will all just capture 1 each to drop TomTom down to 4 amber. And we see that he's putting it on the Urchin, Mermook, and I'm going to guess... Oh, Naughty. I probably would have put 1 on Magda the Rat, because Magda the Rat you want to kill anyways, because that's stealing 2 back. But... And then you see all of his get 1 amber capture on them. He drops a Dominator Bauble, and is going to do some fighting or reaping. Reaping with Schuler. Reaping with Eater of the Dead. Probably going to... Oh, there's no cards in TomTom's discard. What does he have in his discard that he might want to purge? Ooh, that's going to sting a little bit, no matter what he chooses. He may just decline to activate it at all. Eater of the Dead, when you fight or reap with it, you can purge, or actually you must purge a creature from your discard pile. And if you do, you get a +1 counter on Eater of the Dead. So, it does exactly what it sounds like it does. It goes, it finds a corpse, it eats it, and it gets more powerful. And he chooses to purge his Umbra, 1 of 2, I believe, that he had in his discard. Yeah, 1 of 2. So he still has 1 Umbra in the deck, or at least 1 Umbra in the discard. He could have more in his hand and deck. There are 8 cards unaccounted for. We see Tentacus reaping, and then Toxin reaping, forcing a discard of Nerve Blast. That's probably good. That's another... I get to steal 1 with no warning out of Shadows taken care of. And then at that point, Stutzman Nick has exhausted his board. And let's see if he has any other tricks up his sleeve, like a Control the Weak. I doubt it. Generally, players play from hand before they start playing on the board. Not always, and there's nothing requiring it, but that tends to be the general way people think through their turns. They go, okay, I'll play from my hand first, then I'll activate all my creatures. Sometimes that's costly, because there are times when the order will actually matter quite a bit. This was not one of those. Now we see Tom Tom trying to decide on his faction. Oh, at this board state, he decides to choose Untamed. He discards the Dust Pixie that would have given him 2 amber, to be able to activate the Giant Sloth, which would give him 3 amber. And then activating Witch of the Eye and return. Oh, to get rid of its stun, Reaping with Marmook and calling passing turn back. Stutzman Nick is now looking at 8 amber on Tom Tom again. That's going to be rough. Honestly, on Tom Tom's turn, if in his position, I probably would have played the Dust Pixie instead of discarding it to activate the Giant Sloth. It was probably the only thing he could discard, but it would have given 2 amber and reap potential on future turns. Would have left him at 7 instead of 8, so if something like a bait and switch were to come down, it wouldn't be quite as impactful. Stutzman Nick uses a miasma, so that 8 amber isn't going to do any good. And follows up with a poison wave.